Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be talking about Jeff VanderMeer's second novel in the Southern Reach trilogy, which is called Authority. I'm holding up the same book as I did when I read Annihilation, because of course all three books in the trilogy are included in this volume. It's a wonderful volume. This book is a dive into the Southern Reach, which is the part of the government that is sending expeditions into Area X. Jeff VanderMeer said that the first novel, Annihilation, was a dive into Area X, and this is a dive into the Southern Reach. So it is quite a different novel, and it revolves around John Control Rodriguez. He goes by Control throughout most of the book. That's what I'm going to call him. And Control is sent in after the disappearance of the director of the Southern Reach in order to try and clean up the organization, to see what's going on and find out really how the organization is being run. I mean, that's really most of the synopsis I want to give. Everything else would be kind of a spoiler. So before I get into my thoughts on this book, I want to talk about the publication history a little bit. And this blew my mind. He must have written this as one novel. I could be wrong. I don't have any idea. But the first book, Annihilation, was released in February of 2014. And this book, Authority, came out in May of 2014. And the final novel of the trilogy, Acceptance, came out in September of 2014. I did not realize that all these books came out so close to each other. That's really incredible. And that's kind of what makes me feel like that he must have written these beforehand. My initial reaction to this novel is that it is very, very different from Annihilation. Although you could say certain structural elements are similar in the sense that it's a person entering a new area and trying to figure out what's going on in this area. And experiencing some horrors connected to that. So structurally they're very similar, but they are so different when you read them side by side. And I have to say, for me, this book was not as jaw-droppingly, show-stoppingly good as Annihilation. Annihilation is up there for one of my favorite reads of this year. Absolutely incredible. This one doesn't hit those heights. But the real question is, should you keep reading? And I feel like the answer is an absolute yes. There are flaws to this novel, but it is a good novel. Just because it didn't hit the heights Annihilation did for me doesn't mean it's not a good novel. And also there has to be something said about personal taste. I think that's important when talking about this kind of stuff. So yes, the answer, should you keep reading, is a resounding yes. For a while, as I read this novel, my answer was going to be no. I'm not going to lie. There were a couple of points where I kind of wanted to DNF this. And the reason for that is because the backdrop in which this story takes place is an office building. And I feel like I discussed this a lot in my videos about Paprika by Tsutsui. I'm not a big fan of novels that take place in work environments. I feel like, for me, and I have to keep saying this, I have to keep saying for me, that seems like the most boring place in the world, and the kind of place that people read to escape from, right? Part of the escapism of reading is to go to worlds where we don't have to be in cubicles and offices and wherever it is that we spend our time. I just can't imagine wanting to set a book in the workplace. This is just my opinion. Of course, this all comes down to taste. In fact, I should say, before going on with that, Jeff VanderMeer is an incredible writer. I'm in awe of how good of a writer he is. He's great. This book has no issues on prose, on character development, not even on plot. The book is great. It's just... I'm not a huge fan of political intrigue, and I'm not a huge fan of literature that is based in work offices. So the mysteries that he puts forth, like what's going on with the assistant director, Grace, what's going on with Whidbey, I think is his name, Whidbey, I can't remember, Whidbey? What's going on with the science division? Why do they hang weird, creepy gloves by a door that nobody uses? All of these mysteries seem far less important to me than in the first book, when the mysteries were, what is this alien landscape that is constantly changing things on a genetic level? Like, the jump is huge, and I couldn't bring myself to care about these mysteries as much. I just couldn't. However, people that I know that really appreciate and love political intrigue in their novels really loved this one. So if that is what you go for in these types of novels, then this is a good choice. It really is. If you're like me and are not a huge fan of political intrigue, parts of this book might lag, and parts of this book really did lag for me because of that. And again, I just want to say that's my personal preference, because Jeff VanderMeer is a good writer, and everybody that I've spoken to says the third one takes it up a notch again. So I am really looking forward to the third one and the fourth one, which should be coming out soon. It'll be interesting because he wrote these so fast in 2014. It'll be interesting to see what he does with the universe after 10 years. I'm looking forward to that fourth book, and I will absolutely be reading it. When does that come out? October? November? This comes out sometime within the next couple of months. We're going to get that fourth book. So I'll cover the third book on the channel, and then the fourth book as well. But yeah, unfortunately, this one was just a tiny bit of a letdown to me, only because I wasn't as involved in the story he was telling. Cosmic horror, changing landscapes like the Zone get me. Spooky stuff that are happening on the edge of the Zone in the building where the government works isn't as creepy. And again, just personal preference. I will say there is a moment of horror in this that's just awesome, written in typical badass Jeff VanderMeer style. It's not as intense as the scene in Annihilation, the end scene where she comes face to face with the horror that is that book, but there's a version of that in this story as well, that is not as big as that, but still just as creepy. Really well done. Like I said, this guy is a hell of a writer. He's really good at what he does. So I really, really liked that moment, and feel like the book was worth a read just for that moment, in my opinion. Some cool stuff happens with Area X, which I think is worth a read. But overall, my opinion of this book is I don't feel like those moments were upheld in a structure interesting enough to make me want to read this whole book. So I lagged. I had points that I had a very hard time getting through because they were about office politics, which I'm not a huge fan of. It didn't work as well for that. But the fact that the third book is supposed to really take it up a notch makes me excited. And the fact that just reading Jeff VanderMeer's prose and his character development make him worth a read no matter what he's writing about. I do recommend this book, and I think you should continue on with the Southern Reach trilogy. I'm not going to do a deep read of this book because I feel like there's nothing that I gleaned that a regular reader wouldn't be able to glean. So I don't know if this one really necessitates a deep read. I feel like it was pretty straightforward. Some of the horror elements can get a little confusing, but not enough to necessitate a whole deep read of the book. So I'm not going to do a deep read on this one. I'm just going to say keep reading if you're reading along with me, and I really am looking forward to the third book. All right, if you watched this to the end, thank you very much. And if you liked it, please click like. And if you like this kind of content, please click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. Thank you so much for watching.